Millionaire teases a black woman as a beggar, but she arrives like a queen. The Chicago air crackled with anticipation. The Hamilton and Thorne Charity Gala was in full swing at the Palmer House Hotel, all chandeliers and hushed whispers. Sarah Miller, our Sarah, walked in, unnoticed. See, Sarah's a whiz, a total rock star analyst at H&T, but you know how it is. Old money talks louder. Tonight, she just wanted to make a difference for Hope for Chicago. The homeless charity she poured her heart into. Then, bam! Mr. Sterling, the company's biggest donor and biggest jerk, stepped right in front of her. He squinted, like he couldn't quite place her. You work here, right? Catering? He sneered, then tossed a crumpled 20 at her feet. Here, take it. Looks like you could use it more than I do. Sarah's face went hot. Humiliated? Yeah, big time. But Sarah, she's got this quiet fire burning inside. She picked up the bill, held her head high, and then everything changed. Spotlight. Boom. An MC's voice, smooth as silk. Ladies and gentlemen, our keynote speaker tonight, the driving force behind Hope for Chicago. Sarah Miller! A gasp swept the room. Mr. Sterling looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. Sarah started towards the stage, a queen rising from the ashes. But then, disaster. The giant screen behind the stage flickered. Then, blam! A news alert screamed. Beacon Institute in Brussels under investigation for alleged misappropriation of funds. Sarah froze. Her speech, the one she'd worked on for weeks, crumpled in her trembling hand. Brussels? Misappropriation? This couldn't be happening. Who would do this? And why now? This was war. Ei, antes de continuarmos com essa história incrível, preciso te fazer um alerta importante. Muitos inscritos têm relatado que o YouTube removeu suas inscrições sem aviso. Dá só uma conferida rápida no botão vermelho aí embaixo para garantir que você ainda está inscrito no canal. Não quero que você perca nenhum conteúdo exclusivo que vem por aí. E já que você tá aí, deixa aquele like poderoso que me ajuda muito com o algoritmo. Ah, e me conta nos comentários de qual cidade você tá assistindo. Adoro conhecer cada pessoa incrível que faz parte dessa comunidade. Sua participação faz toda a diferença. Vamos interagir. Sarah froze. Brussels, the Beacon Institute? That's where her mom, bless her soul, had worked for years. A wave of nausea hit her. This couldn't be real. It just couldn't. The room was buzzing. All eyes were on her, waiting. Mr. Sterling actually smirked, the jerk. Sarah needed to say something, anything, but her voice was gone. Then a hand touched her arm. Liam, another analyst, from H&T, but someone she barely knew. He gave her a small, almost imperceptible nod. Go, he mouthed. She shook her head, panic rising. Yes, you can, Liam said, his voice low and firm. They're waiting. He was right. She couldn't let Hope for Chicago down. She straightened her shoulders, took a deep breath, and started walking. The screen was still flashing that awful headline, but she focused on the faces in the crowd, trying to find a friendly one. She reached the podium, her legs shaky. She grabbed the microphone, her hand trembling. Good evening, she began, her voice barely a whisper. I was so honored to be asked to speak tonight. Suddenly, the lights went out. Total darkness. A collective gasp filled the room. Then, a single spotlight shone on the center of the stage. But it wasn't Sarah in the light. It was Mr. Sterling. And he was holding a microphone. Surprise! He boomed, his voice echoing through the suddenly silent room. A little change of plans, folks. Sarah stared, completely bewildered. What was happening? You all know me, Sterling continued, puffing out his chest. I'm a businessman. I see opportunities. And tonight, I see a huge opportunity to clear up some misunderstandings. He paused, a sly grin spreading across his face. You see, that little news? Flash about the Beacon Institute? Well, let's just say I have some very inside information on that situation. He took a step closer to the spotlight. And I'm here to tell you, Sarah Miller's mother wasn't just working at the Beacon Institute. She was the one running the show. The one lining her pockets with stolen funds. A collective gasp swept through the room. Sarah felt like she'd been punched in the gut. Her mom? A thief? No, impossible. But Sterling wasn't finished. He pulled out a thick stack of papers. I have here undeniable proof. Bank statements, emails, signed confessions. He held up a photo. It was a picture of Sarah's. Mom, but she looked different. Harder. There was a coldness in her eyes that Sarah had never seen before. And the best part? Sterling chuckled. Sarah here? She knew all about it. She was in on it the whole time. The room erupted. Whispers turned into shouts. People pointed, their faces contorted with disgust. Sarah stood frozen, tears streaming down her face. This couldn't be happening. This wasn't real. Then she saw Liam pushing his way through the crowd, his face pale with shock. He stopped in front of her, his eyes filled with pity. Sarah, he said, his voice barely audible above the din. I need to show you something. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. He handed it to her, his hand trembling. I found this backstage, he whispered. I think you need to see it. Sarah unfolded the paper. It was a handwritten note, and the handwriting, it was unmistakably her own. The note read, Operation Clean Sweep is a go. Phase 1 complete. Target, Sterling. Next, expose the Beacon Institute. For Mom. Below that, scrawled in a different ink, was a single, chilling sentence. Remember, blood is thicker than water. The truth must never come out. Sarah stared at the note. Her own handwriting? It couldn't be. She'd never seen it. Before. Operation Clean Sweep. What in the world? The room was a blur. Shouts, accusations, pointing fingers. Sterling was loving it, basking in the chaos. Liam, standing beside her, looked utterly lost. I don't understand, Sarah stammered, the note shaking in her hand. I didn't write this. But even as she said the words, a seed of doubt sprouted in her mind. Could she have? Was it possible? Then, suddenly, the room went silent. Everyone turned towards the entrance. Standing there, bathed in the dim light of the hallway, was a woman. Tall, elegant, with a steely glint in her eyes. It was Sarah's mom. But it couldn't be. Her mom was dead. She'd been dead for 5 years. Sarah gasped, stumbling backward. This wasn't happening. It was a nightmare. Hello, darling, the woman said, her voice smooth and cold. Miss me? Sarah could only stare, speechless. The woman walked slowly towards the stage, her eyes fixed on Sterling. Robert, she said, her voice dripping with venom. You haven't changed a bit. Still the same slimy little weasel. Sterling paled. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. You thought you could expose me, did you? Sarah's mom continued, her voice rising. You thought you could ruin everything I've worked for? She reached into her purse and pulled out a gun. The room erupted in screams. People dove for cover. Sarah stood frozen, her mind reeling. Her mom? Alive? And holding a gun? Mom, no! Sarah finally managed to shout, but it was too late. Her mom raised the gun, aimed it at Sterling, and fired. But the bullet didn't hit Sterling. It hit Liam. He crumpled to the ground, a look of shock on his face. Sarah screamed, rushing to his side. "Liam! Oh God, Liam!" He was bleeding, a dark stain spreading across his shirt. Sarah pressed her hand against the wound, trying to stop the bleeding. Her mom stood there, the gun still in her hand, a look of cold satisfaction on her face. "Collateral damage," she said, shrugging. "No big deal." Sarah looked up at her mom, her heart filled with horror. This wasn't the woman she remembered. This wasn't her mom. "You're a monster," Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. Her mom laughed, a harsh, cruel sound. "Maybe," she said, "but I'm your monster." And then she turned and walked away, disappearing back into the darkness, leaving Sarah kneeling on the floor beside a dying Liam, with a secret so dark it threatened to consume her whole world. Everything she thought she knew was a lie. And the worst part? She had no idea what was coming next. Sarah looked at Liam, his eyes fluttering, blood bubbling around her fingers. "Stay with me, Liam. Please!" she screamed, but her voice felt miles away, lost in the echo of the gunshot. Her mom, alive, and a killer. The room was a zoo. People screaming, running, tripping over chairs. Security guards finally showed up, guns drawn. But it was too late. The woman who looked like Sarah's mom was gone. Vanished. Liam coughed, a thin trickle of blood escaping his lips. He looked at Sarah. His eyes filled with something she couldn't read. Was it forgiveness? "Sarah," he whispered, his voice so faint she had to lean in close. "The note. It's—" He choked, gasping for air. "It's not what you think." And then his eyes closed. His hand went limp. Liam was gone. Sarah screamed again, a raw animal sound that tore through the chaos. She cradled his head in her arms, rocking back and forth. Dead. He was dead because of her. Because of her freaking life. Suddenly, a hand grabbed her shoulder. It was Officer Davies, a detective she'd met a few times when H&T had hosted some charity events for the police. He looked grim. "Sarah, we need to get you out of here. Now." She didn't argue. She was numb. Davies led her through the panicked crowd, past the overturned tables and shattered champagne glasses, out into the cold Chicago night. They got into an unmarked car, and Davies sped away. Sarah stared blankly out the window, the city lights blurring into streaks of color. Where were they going? What was going to happen to her? "Where are you taking me?" she finally asked, her voice hoarse. Davies glanced at her in the rear-view mirror. "Somewhere safe, Sarah, for now. There are things you need to know." He pulled the car into a deserted parking garage. The air was thick with the smell of exhaust fumes. He stopped the car, turned to her, and took a deep breath. "Sarah," he said, his voice low and serious. "Liam. He wasn't just an analyst at Hamilton and Thorne." She frowned. "What do you mean?" "He was quiet, a little awkward, but—" Davies shook his head. "He was undercover, Sarah. An FBI agent." Sarah stared at him, her mind reeling. An FBI agent? Liam? The guy who spilled coffee on his tie every Monday morning? "But why?" she stammered. "What was he investigating?" Davies hesitated. "He was investigating your mother." The air in the car seemed to thicken, pressing down on her chest. Her mom. Again. He believed she was involved in something much bigger than just misappropriating funds from the Beacon Institute. Davies continued. Something international. A conspiracy. Sarah shook her head, desperate to make sense of it all. "But she's dead. She died 5 years ago." Davies sighed. "That's what we thought. But We have reason to believe that the woman who shot Liam tonight isn't your mother at all. Sarah's head snapped up. What are you saying? We think it's your twin sister, Sarah, the one you don't know about. Her twin sister? A sister she never knew existed? This couldn't be real. It was too much, too crazy. No, she whispered, shaking her head violently. That's impossible. I'm an only child. My parents never. Sarah, Davies interrupted, his voice firm but gentle. Your parents? They weren't exactly who you thought they were either. Your father? He was a deep cover agent for the CIA. He was working on a case involving, well, it's complicated. But let's just say it involved a dangerous network. And your mother? They got involved and they split you apart to ensure your safety, Sarah. Your twin was sent to live in Europe, where she was trained to be... He paused, choosing his words carefully. A highly skilled operative. Operative? Twin sister? CIA? This was insane. In my handwriting. Davies looked at her, his expression grim. We believe your sister. She framed you, Sarah. She wanted to make you look guilty, to protect herself. And now Liam's dead because he got in the way. Suddenly the car lurched. Someone slammed into them from behind, parred. Davies swore, throwing the car into gear and speeding forward. Another car pulled up beside them, and Sarah saw a figure in the passenger seat, pointing a gun. It was her twin. But before Sarah could even scream, the world exploded in a flash of white light. The car spun out of control, crashing into a concrete pillar. Sarah's head hit the dashboard, and everything went black. When she woke up, she was lying on the cold, hard ground. The car was a mangled wreck. Davies was slumped over the steering wheel, unconscious, and her twin sister was gone. But then, Sarah saw something glinting in the dim light of the parking garage. It was a small silver locket lying on the floor beside the wreckage. She picked it up, her fingers trembling. She opened it. Inside, there were two tiny photos. One was a picture of Sarah as a baby. The other was a picture of Liam. But what was written on the back of Liam's photo made Sarah's blood run cold. Nightingale. Nightingale. It was her sister's code name, but it was also their mother's maiden name. And suddenly, Sarah knew. This wasn't about the Beacon Institute. It wasn't about some international conspiracy. It was about something much, much darker. It was about family, and the secrets that could destroy them all. Sarah looked at Liam's photo, the silver locket digging into her palm. Property of Nightingale. It echoed in her brain. A cold, chilling truth. Her mother's maiden name. Liam working for her or against her. She needed to get out of here. Now. Davies was gone. Not just unconscious. Gone. Someone had dragged him from the wreck, leaving a trail of blood. Her sister. She was sure of it. Sarah stumbled out of the car, the taste of blood and metal thick in her mouth. The parking garage was a tomb, silent except for the drip, drip, drip of oil from the wreckage. She ran. No plan, just pure instinct. Get away, get safe. She found a fire escape, clambered up the rusty steps, her legs burning, reached the roof. The Chicago skyline stretched out before her, glittering like a promise. But there was no promise here, only death. She needed answers, and there was only one person who could give them to her. She pulled out her phone, her hand shaking so badly. She almost dropped it, dialed the number. It rang and rang and rang. Finally a voice, cold, distant. What do you want, Sarah? It's me, Mom. I mean, Nightingale. I know, about Liam, about everything. Silence, then a sigh. You shouldn't have called, darling. It's dangerous. Dangerous? You shot Liam. You framed me. You're insane. Insane? I'm protecting you, Sarah. Always have been. Always will be. Protecting me by ruining my life? Your life? You think you know what your life is? You have no idea, Sarah. None at all. Then tell me. Tell me the truth. Who are you? What's going on? Another sigh. Fine. Meet me, but come alone. And if you breathe a word of this to anyone, you're dead. She named a place. An old warehouse down by the docks. Sarah knew it. Desolate. Abandoned. Perfect for a massacre. Be there at midnight, Nightingale said. Then the line went dead. Sarah stared at her phone, her heart pounding. Midnight. She had a few hours. What to do? Where to go? Then she remembered something. Liam. The locket. And the words on the back of his photo. Property of Nightingale. She opened the locket again, staring at Liam's face. He had been trying to tell her something. He knew. He knew. She had to retrace his steps. Figure out what. He was investigating. Maybe, just maybe, she could find some answers before facing her monster. She had to go back to Hamilton and Thorne. Sneaking back into the Palmer house was easier than she thought. The place was still a madhouse, cops swarming everywhere. But nobody recognized her. She was just another face in the chaos. She made her way to Liam's office. It was small, cluttered, filled with half-empty coffee cups and stacks of paperwork. She started searching, desperate. She found nothing. Empty drawers, locked computer, nothing that could help her. Then she saw it. A tiny, almost invisible scratch on the underside of his desk. She ran her finger over it. It felt like a button. She pressed it. Nothing happened. She pressed it again, harder. Click. A section of the desk slid open, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside, a single object, a USB drive. She grabbed it, her hands shaking. This was it. This had to be it. She plugged the drive into Liam's computer, ignoring the warning messages flashing on the screen. The computer whirred to life. A single file appeared. Project Nightingale. She clicked on it. A video started playing. It was Liam, sitting at his desk, looking directly at the camera. "If you're seeing this, Sarah," he said, his voice calm and steady, "then I'm probably dead. And you're in serious danger." He paused, took a deep breath. "I know about your mother and your sister. I know about Project Nightingale, and I know the truth about your father." Her father? What truth? "Your father," Liam continued, "wasn't just a CIA agent. He was Nightingale, the original Nightingale." Sarah gasped. Her father? The cold, distant man she barely remembered? He was Nightingale? Project Nightingale, Liam said, wasn't about stopping a conspiracy. It was about creating one. Your father created a network of highly trained operatives, sleeper agents, planted all over the world. And your mother? She took over after he died. But why? What was the point? "The point," Liam said, as if reading her mind, "was control. Absolute control. They wanted to control the world, Sarah. And they were willing to do anything to get it." He paused again, his eyes filled with a deep sadness. "And you, Sarah, you were always part of the plan. You were the key." "The key? To what?" "You," Liam said, "are the failsafe. The one person who can stop them. But only if you know the truth." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a piece of paper. He held it up to the camera. It was a photo of Sarah and her sister. But they weren't babies. They were teenagers, dressed in matching uniforms, standing side by side. And behind them, in the background, a familiar face. Not her mother, not her sister, but Liam, smiling, wearing a nightingale uniform. Liam, in the nightingale uniform, smiling. My head swam. Liam? He was one of them? All this time, pretending to be the awkward analyst, the good guy. It was all a lie. A sick, twisted game. But why? Why would he lead me on this wild goose chase, only to reveal himself as the enemy? Then it hit me. The locket, property of Nightingale. Not my mom's name. His. It wasn't an admission of allegiance. It was a claim of ownership. He wasn't working against Nightingale. He was Nightingale. I ripped the USB drive from the computer, my hands shaking so violently I could barely hold it. I had to get out of here. Now. As I stumbled out of Liam's office, I bumped into someone. A woman. Familiar. "Sarah," she said, her voice soft, almost hesitant. I looked up. It was Mrs. Davison, Liam's secretary. A sweet, grandmotherly woman who always had a Werther's Original in her purse. "Mrs. Davison, what are you doing here?" She looked around nervously, then pulled me into a nearby supply closet. "I saw you sneaking around, dear. I had to make sure you were okay." Okay? Okay was a million miles away. "Liam, he wasn't who he seemed, was he?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Mrs. Davison's eyes filled with tears. "No, dear, he wasn't. He was a very dangerous man." "But you knew? You knew all along?" She nodded, her face etched with guilt. "I've been working for him for years, Sarah. I didn't have a choice. He had something on me." Something on her? What could Liam possibly have on a sweet old lady like Mrs. Davison? "What did he do? What did he make you do?" I demanded, my voice rising. She started to sob. He made me help him. He made me hurt people." Hurt people? Mrs. Davison? It didn't make sense. Then he reached into her purse, not for a Werther's Original, but for a gun. "I'm so sorry, Sarah," she said, her voice trembling. "He said if I didn't do this, he would hurt my grandchildren." My heart stopped. Mrs. Davison, with a gun, pointed at me. "Mrs. Davison, please, you don't have to do this." But her eyes were empty, hollow. She was just a puppet, dancing to Liam's tune. Even from beyond the grave. She raised the gun, and then someone burst into the closet. Not my mom, not my twin sister, but my dad. Older, worn, but unmistakably my father. He grabbed Mrs. Davison's arm, wrestling the gun away from her. It clattered to the floor. "Dad?" I screamed. "But you're dead! I saw your grave!" He ignored me, his eyes fixed on Mrs. Davison. "Get out of here," he growled. "Now." She scurried away, disappearing into the hallway. He turned to me, his face unreadable. "We don't have much time," he said, his voice low and urgent. "They know you're here." "But how? How are you alive? What's going on?" He grabbed my arm, pulling me out of the closet. "There's no time to explain. Just trust me. If you want to survive, you need to come with me." I hesitated. Could I trust him? After everything? After Liam? After my mom? But what choice did I have? He led me through the maze of hallways, past the panicked crowds and the flashing police lights. We reached a hidden staircase, leading down to the basement. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice trembling. He didn't answer. He just kept moving. We reached a heavy steel door. He pulled it open, revealing a dark, narrow tunnel. "Get in," he said. I took a deep breath and stepped inside. The tunnel was cold and damp, the air thick with the smell of mildew. We walked in silence, the only sound our footsteps echoing off the stone walls. Finally, we reached the end of the tunnel, another door, this one made of wood. He opened it, and we stepped out into a secret room. Small, but filled with computers, monitors, and communication equipment. It looked like a command center. "Welcome to the real world, Sarah," my father said. Then he turned to me, his eyes filled with a sadness I'd never seen before. "There's something you need to know," he said. "Something about Liam. Something about us." He paused, took a deep breath. "Liam wasn't just working for Nightingale," he said. He was your brother." "Liam wasn't just working for Nightingale," he said. He was your brother." My head swam. Brother? Liam? The awkward, sweet guy who always brought donuts to the office? My brother? It was too much. Too fast. "What are you talking about?" I choked out, grabbing the edge of a nearby table for support. The floor seemed to be tilting beneath me. He sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. "It's complicated, Sarah. Very complicated. Your mother, she had Liam before she met me. She gave him up for adoption. Said she couldn't handle it. Not with everything else going on. Everything else. The CIA, the Nightingale Network, the lies, the secrets. It all swirled around me, a toxic vortex threatening to pull me under. "But why didn't you tell me?" I asked, tears stinging my eyes. "Why keep this from me?" He looked away, shame etched on his face. "I promised her, Sarah. I promised your mother I'd never tell you. She said it would protect you. From the truth and from him." "Him?" I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. "Who him?" He hesitated, his eyes darting around the room as if he expected someone to burst in at any moment. "Liam's father," he said finally. He's still out there, Sarah. And he's even more dangerous than your mother ever was." I stared at him, speechless. Liam had a father? A dangerous father? What was this? Some kind of twisted family reunion from hell? "Who is he?" I demanded, my voice rising. "Tell me, who is Liam's father?" He took a deep breath, his eyes locking with mine. "His name," he said, "is Robert Sterling." The world tilted. Robert Sterling, the arrogant, condescending jerk who had thrown money at me, who had accused my mother of being a thief, who had been the target of whatever this insane plot was. He was Liam's father, my brother's father. "No," I whispered, shaking my head. That's impossible. He's evil. He's a monster." "I know," my father said, his voice grim. "And he's coming for you, Sarah. He's always been coming for you." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a gun. A Glock, small and lethal. "Take this," he said, handing it to me. "You're going to need it." I stared at the gun, my hand trembling. I had never held a gun in my life. I can't," I stammered. "I don't know how." "You'll learn," he said, his voice hard. "You have to. Because tonight you're going to face him. You're going to face Robert Sterling, and you're going to end this, once and for all." Just then, a deafening explosion rocked the room. The lights flickered and died, plunging us into darkness. "They found us," my father shouted, grabbing my arm and pulling me towards a hidden door in the back of the room. We stumbled through the darkness, the sound of gunfire echoing behind us. We were running out of time. As we reached the door, another figure stepped out of the shadows. A woman, tall, elegant, with a steely glint in her eyes. My mother, Nightingale, but something was different. "Hello, darling," she said, her voice smooth and cold. "I see you found your daddy, dearest." She smiled, a cruel, predatory smile. And then she reached out and grabbed my father's hand. Not to shoot him, not to fight him, but to hold him. "It's been a long time, Robert," she said, her voice filled with a strange, twisted tenderness. "I've missed you." My father stared at her, his face a mask of shock and longing. Nightingale? He whispered, his voice hoarse. But I thought. You thought I was dead? She said, chuckling softly. Oh, Robert, you should know me better than that. I'm always one step ahead. She turned to me, her eyes filled with a chilling intensity. You see, Sarah, she said, her voice dripping with venom. Everything you know is a lie. Your father, he didn't betray me. He didn't leave me. He was working with me all along. What? I gasped, my mind reeling. No, that's not true. Oh, it's true, she said, her voice like ice. Your father and I, we're a team, a family, and now it's time for you to join us. She reached out her hand, offering it to me. Come, Sarah, she said. Come home. My father stood there, frozen, his eyes pleading with me. Don't listen to her, Sarah, he said, his voice trembling. She's insane. Am I, Robert? She said, turning to him, her voice laced with menace. Or am I just committed? And then she did something that shattered everything. I thought I knew. She looked right at me, her eyes shining with a horrifying mix of love and madness, and whispered a single chilling word. Mommy? My own head began to spin violently. She was not offering her hand to me. She was speaking directly to my father, calling him Mommy. My own head began to spin violently. She was not offering her hand to me. She was speaking directly to my father, calling him Mommy. The room swam. Mommy? My mother calling my father Mommy? It was like some sick joke, a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Then I saw it. A tiny detail I'd missed before, a flicker of recognition in my father's eyes. He knew. He knew what she was. Robert, my mother purred, stepping closer to my father, ignoring me completely. It's time we finished what we started. Together. He didn't resist. He just stood there, transfixed, like a moth drawn to a deadly flame. What is going on? I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. My mother laughed, a high, shrill sound that echoed through the room. Don't you see, darling? Your father isn't who you think he is. He's not just a CIA agent. He's my twin sister. Twin sister? My father? A woman? My brain short-circuited. This couldn't be real. It was too insane. No! I screamed, shaking my head violently. You're lying! He's my father! Is he, Sarah? My mother said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Or is he just playing a part? A part we wrote for him years ago. She reached out and gently stroked his cheek. You've done so well, Robert. I'm so proud of you. But it's time to take off the mask. Show her the real you. My father, Robert, whatever he was, closed his eyes and took a deep breath. And then, slowly, deliberately, he began to change. It started subtly, a softening of the jawline, a slight shift in the eyes. Then his Adam's apple disappeared, his voice deepened, a tremor entered his hands. Hair disappeared. It was the transformation, gruesome and unreal, was something of a movie. And when it was over, standing before me was not my father, but a woman. A woman who looked exactly like my mother. Identical, twins. They stood there, side by side, two mirror images of pure, unadulterated evil. Surprise, my father said, her voice a chilling echo of my mother's. Happy family reunion, darling? I couldn't breathe, couldn't speak, couldn't even scream. I just stood there, paralyzed with shock and horror. You see, Sarah, my mother said, stepping towards me, her eyes glowing with a terrifying intensity. "We're not just a network. We're a dynasty. And you're our heir." She reached out her hand, offering it to me again. "Join us, Sarah," she said, her voice soft and persuasive. "Let us show you the world. Let us give you everything you've ever wanted." I stared at her hand, then at my father, then back at her again. They were waiting, watching. My heart pounded in my chest. What to do? Who to trust? Then I remembered Liam. His face, his sacrifice, the locket, property of Nightingale. It wasn't about family. It was about control. And these monsters were willing to do anything to get it. I took a deep breath, steeled my resolve, and spat in their faces. "Never," I said, my voice shaking but firm. "I'd rather die." My mother's face twisted with rage. "So be it," she hissed, raising her hand. But before she could strike, a shot rang out. Not from me, not from her, but from behind me. I turned around to see my sister, standing in the doorway, a smoking gun in her hand. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a strange mix of anger and pity. "I'm sorry, Sarah," she said, her voice barely audible above the ringing in my ears. "But it's the only way." And then she raised the gun again. My world went black. Was this the end? Not yet, because there's another body that lands in my arms before I hit the floor. Something heavy, wet, but it softens my fall, and it doesn't kill me. It feels familiar. The last thing I see before the dark takes me is a locket, a simple silver heart swinging on a chain. The heart spins open. There are 2 photos, side by side. As it closes, one more thing is visible, a name, Sterling. Not yet, because there's another body that lands in my arms before I hit the floor. Something heavy, wet, but it softens my fall, and it doesn't kill me. It feels familiar. The last thing I see before the dark takes me is a locket, a simple silver heart swinging on a chain. The heart spins open. There are 2 photos, side by side. As it closes, one more thing is visible, a name, Sterling. Then nothing, blackness, silence, but not for long. Groaning, a throbbing headache, the taste of blood. Where was I? Slowly, my eyes fluttered open. Dim light, concrete, cold, the secret room. The computers, dark and silent. My head was resting on something warm, wet. I looked down. My mother, her eyes wide, unseeing. A bullet hole in her chest, and beside her, my sister, clutching the gun. Tears streaming down her face. I didn't mean to," she sobbed, her voice choked with emotion. "I was aiming for him." She gestured wildly towards a figure slumped against the wall. My father? The trans woman? Impossible to tell in the dim light. But it wasn't them I focused on. It was the locket, still clutched in my hand. The photos. Sterling. And suddenly, everything clicked. It wasn't just a name. It was a message. A clue. Sterling wasn't Liam's father. Sterling was Liam. Liam wasn't dead. He had faked his own death and used all the information he'd gotten from my family to bring me down. My real parents must have been the ones in the photos the FBI had that were dead. A wave of nausea washed over me. I scrambled away from my dead mother, from my sobbing sister, from the whole freaking nightmare. What is this?" I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. My sister looked up, her eyes pleading. It's a game, Sarah. A sick, twisted game. We were all just pawns." "Pawns in what game? Who's playing?" She hesitated, her lip trembling. He is, she said, her voice barely audible. He's always been playing. Who is he? She took a deep breath, her eyes filled with a terror that mirrored my own. Robert Sterling, she whispered. He's behind everything. Just then the door to the secret room burst open, and there he was, Robert Sterling, standing in the doorway, a smug grin on his face. But he wasn't alone. Beside him stood Liam, alive, smiling. And then everything went black, again. But this time I knew. It wasn't just unconsciousness. It was something much, much worse. When I woke up, it was to the smell of salt water and the rocking of a boat. My hands were bound, my mouth gagged. Robert Sterling stood before me, his eyes cold and calculating. "Welcome aboard, Sarah," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "I'm so glad you could join us." And then he gestured towards Liam, who was standing beside him, his face devoid of any emotion. "Say hello to your fiancé, darling," Sterling said. "We have a wedding to plan." Fiancé? Wedding? What fresh hell was this? Sterling chuckled, sensing my confusion. "Oh, didn't you know, Sarah? This was all part of the plan. Liam was supposed to win you over, infiltrate your family, and bring you to me." He stepped closer, his eyes burning into mine. "And now," he whispered, "the game is over. And you, my dear, have lost." He raised his hand, signaling to Liam. And then Liam did something that shattered what was left of my soul. He smiled, a cold, cruel smile. A smile that said everything. He was one of them. Always had been. And he had been playing me all along. The boat lurched, throwing me against the railing. The wind howled, carrying my silent scream out into the vast, unforgiving ocean. And then I saw it, in the distance. A small island, lush, green, and familiar. As we drew closer, the details became clearer. Palm trees, white sand, a sprawling mansion perched on a cliff overlooking the sea. And then I recognized it. It was the island where I had spent my summers as a child. The island where my parents had. My blood ran. Cold. It couldn't be. But it was. As the boat pulled up to the dock, I saw her, standing on the shore, waving. Not my mother, not my sister, but me. A perfect replica. My doppelganger, smiling, waiting. And suddenly, I understood. I wasn't just a pawn. I was being replaced. A ilha era mesmo aquela. A minha ilha. Aquele lugar que só existia nas minhas memórias mais felizes. E ali, parada na areia, a minha cópia, impecável, assustadoramente igual. Ela sorriu, sorriso que não era meu. Sorriso que prometia o fim. Sterling aproximou-se. "Bem-vinda, Sarah. A sua nova vida começa agora." A minha sósia abriu os braços. "Junte-se a nós. Seja quem você sempre deveria ter sido." Mas eu não era como eles. Eu não queria poder, nem controle, nem essa loucura toda. Eu só queria que acabasse. De repente, um estrondo. Um tiro. Mas não veio de Sterling nem da minha cópia. Veio do barco. Na proa, uma figura solitária. Liam, mas não o Liam. Fio de calculista que eu tinha visto pela última vez. Este Liam, tinha fogo nos olhos. "Eu sinto muito, Sarah." Ele gritou, a voz embargada. Eu não podia deixar isso acontecer. Sterling ficou furioso. "Você me traiu, seu imprestável." Liam ignorou-o. "Corra, Sarah. Corra e não olhe para trás." E então o inferno se desencadeou. Tiros para todos os lados. Explosões. A ilha, outrora um paraíso, transformou-se num campo de batalha. Eu corri. Corri como nunca tinha corrido antes. A floresta engoliu-me, protegendo-me da carnificina. Cheguei a uma clareira, um penhasco. O oceano estendia-se à minha frente, infinito e implacável. Não havia para onde ir. Olhei para trás. Sterling aproximava-se, o rosto torcido de raiva. Você não pode escapar, Sarah. Você pertence a nós. Mas ele estava errado. Eu não pertencia a ninguém. Fechei os olhos, respirei fundo e saltei. O ar frio chicoteou-me o rosto. O oceano aproximava-se, rápido demais. E então, a escuridão. Mas, e se eu não tivesse morrido? E se a queda me tivesse levado para outro lugar? Um lugar ainda mais sombrio, ainda mais perigoso? E se esta história, este pesadelo, estivesse apenas começando? Você precisa saber a verdade. Você precisa se inscrever agora. Essa história está longe de acabar. E só os verdadeiros fãs como você merecem conhecer o que vem a seguir. Esmague o botão de like agora. Alimente o algoritmo com a sua força. Mostre que você está do nosso lado. Inunde os comentários com suas teorias. O que você acha que aconteceu? Quem é o verdadeiro vilão? Queremos ouvir você. Compartilhe esta história com 5 amigos agora. Não espere mais um segundo. Eles precisam conhecer esse final inacreditável.